Hey guys, it's GS Luke bringing you guys my DFS preview for this year's 2021 PGA Championship. We're going to do a course breakdown on this video. We're going to go over the field, some of the key stats for modeling this week, as well as my top 6 golfers in each price range to target on DraftKings. So hopping right into it. Like I said, it's major championship week once again. The PGA Championship's that iconic American championship that travels courses. We have the 20 PGA professionals competing, a lot of European Tour players involved in the field, and overall it makes for a really fun event. And this week we head to Kieva Island. This is going to be the longest track in major championship history, so that's notable. It's going to be an absolute test. And we have seen this course one time before. We saw it back in 2012, and Rory Mcilroy won by 8 strokes. That's the record for a PGA Championship margin of victory, and that's why Rory Mcilroy comes in this week as the #1 favorite. So that's also something to keep an eye on. So not only are all the biggest stars teeing it up this week, but we get to tee it up ourselves in the DraftKings contest. We have multiple Millie Maker contests, 2 or 3. I think one of them already filled for this week, and as well as multiple 100K plus prize pools. So if you guys are looking to get in those contests, make sure you guys do your research, and you can take down some big bucks this week. With that being said, let's hop into the course. As aforementioned, the course for this week is Kiowa Island. It'll be the ocean course. That is at Kieva Island Resort down in South Carolina. This is a famous course. It's been used for the Ryder Cup before. It was actually designed for the Ryder Cup, and now it's being used for major championships. You love to see it. It's a par 72, 7,876 yards. Like I said, the longest track in major championship history. Designed by Pete Dye and Alice Dye. They both had a part in this design. And we do get some atypical grass types, I'll say. We get paspalum greens, which we usually see down in the Caribbean, places like Puerto Rico, that kind of thing. But we are seeing it this week down in South Carolina, and we are going to have Bermuda fairways, which is typical. So just to give you some details about this course, the course sits juxtaposed between the marshes of South Carolina and the ocean. Kieva Island is a very upscale island, a lot of really nice houses. It's a resort island. You pretty much have to have a lot of money to be going to Kieva Island. It's one of the nicest courses in the world. As for the ocean course, it's beautiful. Every single fairway is raised up 15 yards so that the players have great views of the marshes around them, the ocean if it's in view sight. The greens are positioned the same way, and overall it's pretty much awe-inspiring if you're playing that course. I've never had the pleasure to do so, but from looking at overhead views and whatnot, it's awe-inspiring. So it is beautiful to the eye. I will say it's definitely going to distract players from time to time, but it's an absolute beast of a course. Like I mentioned, longest track in major championship history. On top of that, you have a Pete Dye design. Pete Dye is devilish with his designs. He penalizes misses, even the slightest misses, to the fullest extent. I'm talking huge drop-off areas around greens, hollows for chipping areas. The marshes are a penalty area themselves. You hit it into a marsh, you're definitely taking it unplayable. The raised fairways also make any slight miss off a fairway a massive problem. You're usually having a side hill lie, you're in deep rough, and overall you're usually pitching out. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic this week. A lot of people are putting emphasis on the bombers this week, but you're also going to have to be looking at accuracy. Again, these misses are just penalized to the fullest extent, and we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail here in a second with our key stats. Well, it is going to be huge, easy to imagine some huge scores this week. There's going to be some guys that probably shoot in the 80s. We don't see that very often on the PGA Tour. Maybe some of the PGA professionals and whatnot don't even break 90. It's just that kind of golf course. People that play it as resort guests and whatnot, you're just trying to break 100, and that would be impressive, to be quite honest with you. So even though something to mention about the course as well is that water is only in play on 6 holes, but there are hazards on every single hole. Like I mentioned, the marshes, a lot of the natural areas are completely unplayable. You can't even walk through them. There's just snakes. It's a swamp. You'd be lucky to even find your ball if you were given an hour, let alone the 2-minute time frame that you have. So when you see that water is only in play on 6 holes, just disregard that. It's in play on every single hole. Something I also mentioned as well is the wind. You've probably heard this in other podcasts this week, but the wind at Kieva Island averages about 20 miles an hour. Now, you're going to see on Wind Finder numbers around like 10 to 15 miles an hour. That's further inland, believe it or not. A lot of those wind stations and whatnot aren't actually on the coast. And if you've been to the coast or you live on the coast, that the wind speeds along the coast are just so much higher than they are inland. So expect the wind to just be howling all weekend. With that being said, those are some of the specifics there. Past pollen greens tend to run a little bit slower than usual as well. But overall, we're getting essentially a Caribbean course that is in South Carolina, and that's just 7,900 yards, just an absurd distance. So it's a little bit atypical, but when we get into the key stats here, we'll make it make some more sense. Now talking about the field this week, we have a full 156-man field. The last man in was K.H. Lee after his breakthrough win last week. We also have 20 PGA professionals in the field. They went through a qualifying process, had a tournament they had to win to get into this event. They're not really a threat to contend. You may see one or two make the cut. You have a few of the younger instructors out there. I believe Joe Summerhays. Some of these guys that may be a little bit in the race to make the cut, I'd say, but they're not going to contend. It just makes it a little bit easier for the others to make the cut. And we also have plenty of notable European Tour players. I'm just going to go through a list real quick. We have Garrick Higo, who is definitely the most notable of all of them. He has 2 wins out of his last 3 starts over there. John Catlin, we saw him last week. Robert McIntyre, Martin Keimer, Christian Bezainhout. We have Rasmus Højgaard, Thomas Dietrich. We have Rosner, Sullivan, a lot of other European Tour players, especially in that lower 6K range as well, that could be very attractive this week. Like I mentioned, the wind is definitely going to be up. This course was set up just like a coastal links course. That's what Pete Dye was going for. And who better than the European Tour guys that play them pretty much every single week at a course like this. So it's definitely something I'll be considering. And the cut this week is a little bit different. It's the only field that's still left over the PGA Tour that has the top 70 in ties. So again, we do have the full 156-man field, but again, minus 20 with those PGA professionals, and then it's the top 70 in ties making the cut. You're going to have a much higher cut percentage than you usually do this week. So as a result, you can afford to be a little bit more aggressive with some of your takes. And that's something that I'll definitely be doing this week. Now let's get into some of the key stats for this week. Now hopping into my key stats for this week at Kiowa Island. First of all, if you haven't been here for one of my videos before, these key stats are the 3 stats that I'm just going to weigh the most in my mathematical modeling this week. I take a mathematically based approach to all my DFS sports, whether it's golf, NBA, baseball, and I try to lean on the stats as much as possible. So these 3 stats are going to do a lot of the storytelling this week. They're going to differentiate some of the higher end players from the lower end players, and you should definitely try to take them into consideration as well. Coming in at number 3, we have shots gained around the green. So at any Pete Dye design, you're absolutely penalized for any miss that you make. There's a lot of chipping hollows you can hit into, a lot of hazards that are just tough, hard to hit out of, side hill lies that are caused by the raised fairways and greens, and overall you have to have a sharp around the green game. If we look at the leaderboard from Kiowa in 2012 for the PGA Championship, we see a lot of grinders on the top end of that leaderboard. You would expect that longer players, bombers per se, would do well at a course like this, but that's just not what we saw in 2012. Now, granted, a lot of that could have been the wind. It was said that the wind was pretty crazy that week. And obviously, our winner that week was a bomber in Rory Mcilroy. So I don't want to look into it too much, but when we look at the just type of course it is with being a Pete Dye course, it definitely makes sense to take this into consideration. So another wrinkle to consider as well is that in extreme wind, the course may play really, really long. I'm talking like 8,600 yards. If that's the case, a lot of your approaches into long par 4s and par 5s are going to be considered around the green game. Guys are going to be missing short. They're going to be hitting their 3-woods as long as humanly possible, just short into some of these greens. And as a result, around the green game may just take a little bit more precedence this week than usual. So again, winning score is likely going to be in the single digits under par, and in pretty much every tournament we see like that, being able to scramble and get up and down is always important. Our number 2 key stat this week is shots gained off the tee. Now, given that Kiowa is going to be close to 8,000 yards and could play longer if the wind is strong, it makes perfect sense that we're going to be playing bombers this week. And while shots gained off the tee isn't just driving distance, we also have to consider the driving accuracy part of this as well. Like I mentioned, there's marshes, there's ocean, lakes surrounding every single fairway, every single green. So if you're missing, you're not being accurate this week, you're spraying the ball, you are absolutely going to shoot bonkersly high. I mean, I'm talking 80, 85, something like that. And as a result, a lot of people are going to get sucked into that power build and completely neglect accuracy. And as a result, I think a lot of them are going to get guys that miss the cut this week, in a week where making the cut isn't even going to be that difficult. So like I mentioned as well, this is a Pete Dye design. He's infamous for making you create angles into greens. You can either take the safe approach off the tee, as he says, or you can take the safe approach going into the green. So having accuracy off the tee, being able to rely on that and set up easy iron shots, I think it's going to be extremely advantageous this week. Something to consider as well is that a lot of people are comparing this golf course to TPC Sawgrass or PGA National. Obviously, a lot due to the architect, a lot due to the wind and conditions and whatnot. And we're going to see a lot of water variance this week. The best way to avoid that water variance is to have an accurate driver of the ball. But we know at almost 8,000 yards, you're also going to have that distance. So gaining off the tee is going to be vital this week. And if they're not gaining off the tee this week, I don't see them cracking the top 10. And that's going to be one of my huge polarizers this week. And finally, the number one key stat I'm looking at this week is shots gained approach. This is a staple of all my analysis. It's a staple of golf. They call it the beautiful part of golf, the approach play. And for any proof of just how important it is at majors, just take a look at Tiger Woods' career, number 2 in majors all time, or even more recently, Colin Morikawa, the youngest of the 2 majors ever. So Pete Dye courses are known for penalizing misses. Again, you're going to hear me say this over and over and over again. It just shows you how important accuracy can be. But even more so in majors, with the firm, fast greens, given that you're playing against the absolute best in the world, you have to be coming in with good form with your irons. There's sand traps, there's runoff areas that are going to add 1 to 2 strokes if you miss with your irons. So for golfers that don't miss very often this week, golfers that are in the 85 to 90% green and regulation percentage range are going to run away with their scores this week. The last time we saw the PGA played at Kiowa, we saw someone win by 8 strokes. That was Rory Mcilroy. He had his irons game on, he wasn't missing into the hazards, and his short game was on par. And to win this week at Kiowa, I think that's exactly what you're going to need. There's going to be 2 or 3 guys that have their games together, that are hitting most of the greens, good with their short game, and I believe that run away with it this week. And to compete with those, that 2 to 3 horse game, you're absolutely going to have the best irons in the field. So something to mention as well, so this is something you can add into your analysis on top of shots gained approach, would be specializing in a lower ball flight player. So the winds are expected to kick up, like I mentioned, 15 to 20 miles an hour gusts on average. So targeting guys that can keep the ball under that wind, that will get that extra distance that isn't batted off by that wind, is going to be key this week. An exception to this rule, maybe some of the Florida golfers. There's a way to play in the wind that a lot of people just aren't used to. Maybe if you're from Oklahoma State where it's super windy, South Florida, something like that, then you have that type of experience. Being somebody that's from South Florida, I've played in it for 4 or 5 years now. You kind of get the hang for it. But essentially, you just grab extra club, you hit into the wind, you have to kind of visualize it just like a putt breaking through the air. And the guys that are really good at that are also people to keep an eye on this week. I'm talking golfers that are, based out of Jupiter, Palm Beach Gardens, even Miami, even Tampa area. They're going to have a lot of experience with that wind, so keep that in mind as well. Now getting into my top 6 golfers to target in each range. In the spend-up range, we have Justin Thomas coming in at $11,300. So Justin Thomas not only has one of the most complete games in golf, he's also very used to windy conditions, being based out of Jupiter, Florida, and he also excels when the competition gets tough. For proof of that, just look at the Players Championship. He was absolutely rallying up the crowds. He seemed to feed off that energy. I was there in person. You could just tell he was rallying everyone up. So going into a PGA Championship where there's going to be crowds, there's going to be a lot of energy. I always like JT in events like that. So a lot of people would criticize JT, so this is why this pick may be a little bit surprising, just because he hasn't had a lot of top 10s recently. He's struggled with the putter. We've seen him have a few ceiling performance rounds, 6-7 under at the Wells Fargo, I believe at the Valspar, or maybe it was the week before that. He had one really good round as well, but he's really been grinding with the putter. A lot of people would see that as a negative, but to me, it seems like he's trying to get ready for this event. He's been really grinding, trying to get that putting down. And if there's anyone I trust to put in that work and to show up when the time matters, at a major like this, it's Justin Thomas. So I look at those ceiling rounds and I actually get a lot of hope. It shows me that obviously what he's working on works from time to time. And when he gets that consistency, he's going to run away with a tournament. I'm telling you, he's going to win by 4 or 5 strokes in the next month or two. Just looking at him statistically, though, he ranks number 1 in the field in shots gained approach. He's top 10 in shots gained around the green, so he's great at saving himself when he gets into trouble. And having that high of an around the green stat is extremely impressive for Justin Thomas, mostly because he doesn't put himself into trouble very often at all. He's usually among the elite off the tee. This year, he's only gaining 0.27 strokes per round off the tee. Some of that is due to, accuracy problems, but of late, he's been hitting that low rope draw. It's a lot more accurate. He's also going to be able to keep that underneath the wind as well, so I think it's very intriguing to play Justin Thomas this week, especially if he gets that putter coming around. Even if he doesn't, I do think he has a really high floor. Again, he's one of the most accurate players on tour. He's great at saving himself, and he's at the very least a neutral putter. If he goes out here this week, even gains 1 to 2 strokes over the tournament putting, he's going to see a top 5 or even a win. So I love that potential. I love that upside there. And I could see him hoisting that trophy by the end of the week. My second man in for this week is Viktor Hovland, coming in at a price tag of $9,300. He's another absolute stud ball striker. He's number 4 in the field in shots gained ball striking. That's off the tee and approach play, by the way. He's coming in on an absolute tear. He has 2 straight third place finishes in a row, at events that quite frankly didn't profile the same at all. So it's great to see that Hovland's having success at different types of golf courses. And even without a win, Hovland has put up some of the craziest fantasy scores that we've seen this year. He's put up streaks of 5 to 6 birdies in a row from time to time, rounds of 8 to 9 under. And when you're playing fantasy golf, that's exactly what you're looking for. Those ceiling rounds, those rounds where you get those streaks, you're able to put up those 4 consecutive rounds of 69 or better. That's how you win a GPP. And Hovland has 2 wins so far on tour. This is something that's pretty crazy to me. One was at the Puerto Rico Open and one was at the Mayakoba Classic. Both on golf courses with slow paspalum greens and both coastal golf courses. This week at Kiowa Island, we have the paspalum greens, coastal golf course. We got the winds to boot, and everything's looking up for Viktor Hovland. He's got the form coming in, the familiarity on the surface, the success at these type of golf courses as well. And I believe that he has one of the highest floors in the entire field. He's got a higher floor than guys like Jon Rahm, Dustin Johnson to me. I think he has a much higher chance of making the cut. And like I said, he's won on these type of golf courses before. So don't be surprised if he goes out there and wins his first major this week. He'll definitely be getting a bet from me. I think that he could take it down this week very easily. He just fits the golf course. He's coming in on the right form. And he has that familiarity, like I mentioned. So he's going to be chalk, but he's well worth it, in my opinion. I'll be well over the field this week on my DraftKings lineups, and that's why he's my second man in. My bread and butter play this week is going to be Tony Fenow, an $8,600 golfer, and somebody who hasn't been in the best form of late, but he's somebody who could be sneaky given that lack of recent form. Fenow has elite length off the tee. That's definitely going to be useful this week. He's also capable of taking a little bit off his driver and placing it where he wants to. So he's going to do great off the tee this week. He has solid approach game, top 15 in the field in that category, and his around the green game is actually one of the best in the field. He's top 8 in that category. He's number 7 in this field, and I don't think a lot of people consider that with Tony Fenow. He has that great touch around the green. He has a knack for that competitive instinct. He never wants to make a bogey. And I love that about his game this week. And just like Viktor Hovland, Fenow's had a lot of success on paspalum before. His only win being at the Puerto Rico Open. So you love to see that. And I think a lot of that has to do with his aggressiveness as a putter. Tony Fenow, if you've ever watched him play, he's always hitting the ball past the hole. And a lot of that is because Tony Finau's not afraid. He's out there to make a lot of birdies. He's very confident in his ability, to make that putt coming back. And on slow past palm greens, I think it just mitigates some of that aggressiveness for him. He's still able to go out there, put a good roll on it. It's just not going to roll 3 to 5 paces past the hole. It's going to be in that 1 to 3 range instead. And I think he just has a lot of built-in familiarity on the surface. I think you're going to get low ownership. And again, he statistically and characteristically profiles well for this event course. So I think he has a big week this week, and that's why he's my bread and butter play. My value play for this week is going to be Sam Burns, a $7,500 golfer who's in an absolutely disrespectful price tag. He's coming in off a win at the Valspar and a runner-up finish at the Byron Nelson. He's the hottest golfer on the planet. He profiles well for this golf course. Overall, I'm not going to go into crazy detail with this. He's a slam dunk play. He's, again, maybe the best form in the world. Only Garrick Higo might have better form than him, just because he has 2 wins out of his last 3, not 1. And Sam Burns is long off the tee. He tends to be accurate off the tee as well, so I love that about his game. He's been one of the best approach players in the world over the last 2 months. He's gaining over a stroke on approach over the last 2 months, and you love to see that coming into a major championship. The only reason, to kind of hold back on him would be his around the green game. He's not the best with his short game. He's definitely not bleeding strokes in the category, though. So I love him this week. I think a lot of people are going to love him as well, though. So definitely keep that in mind. If his ownership's like 40-50%, he might be a fade, but in that 20 to 30% range, I'm definitely, willing to go over on that. So he's definitely going to be a great play this week. My diamond in the rough is also another home run play. It's Ryan Palmer at $6,900. I think that the pricing on him is just a little bit disrespectful, just like it was to Burns. Ryan Palmer was $9,000 to roster last week on DraftKings at the Byron Nelson. So to consider that he's in the $6,000 range just a week later, it's just a little bit ridiculous to me. He's been extremely consistent this year. He's made 14 straight cuts. He's finished in the top 17 in 7 of those 14 as well. So not only is he making those cuts and being consistent, but he's garnering a lot of upside as well. And at $6,900, most golfers in that range, you're just hoping make the cut. They're not high upside players that are finishing in the top 15. They're not guys that make a lot of birdies. But Ryan Palmer fits all of those characteristics. He's a high upside player. He's a guy that makes a lot of birdies. Oftentimes finishes in the optimal lineup on DraftKings. And as a result, he's going to be an absolute stud play for me this week. I imagine a lot of people will be on him as well. Just in that $6,900 price tag is a little bit shocking, I would say. But he's definitely well worth it. He's got a great, off the tee game, great approach play. His around the green and putting stats aren't the best. They're right around neutral. But in a field like this, where he has those ball striking stats to lean on, he's not really going to have to worry about that. He's well worth the investment this week, and that's why he's my diamond in the rough. Lastly, my flyer for this week is JT Poston, another JT, coming in at $6,100. Now, flyers, never profile well for a course, but JT Poston pretty much is the best we've ever gotten. He's coming in with decent form, a few cuts made, a few decent rounds to boot as well, 4 or 5 under, but he is a little bit more of a short game specialist. So I mentioned back in 2012, Kiowa, we had a lot of grinders make that top 10, and a lot of that was just their ability and willingness to get up and down. They willed the ball into the hole. They never gave up. They made as many pars as they possibly could, and JT Poston fits that kind of bill. He's also somebody who plays, he's played his entire life growing up in wind. He played on a muni course, a coastal muni course, where he had to deal with wind every single day, and he really learned how to hit the ball low. He talked about it when he was at the PGA Championship. I believe it was a similar type muni course where he grew up on. And he talked about having to learn how to hit the ball low. In a week where we expect the wind to be a huge factor, like it is at Kiowa, I expect players like Poston to have a built-in advantage. They're used to having to run balls up onto greens. They've been doing it their entire life. And at $6,100, he gives you that high upside, even if he has a very low floor. Again, he's a sprayer of the golf ball from time to time. If he's spraying it in the marshes, he's not going to make the cut. But if he puts that game, together even slightly, I do think he could put up some fireworks this week. So that's why he's my flyer. That's all I have for this week, guys. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments who you guys have winning this year's PGA Championship. Maybe it's JT, maybe it's Hovland, or maybe it's someone I didn't have on my board. Let me know. As always, make sure to like and subscribe if you guys enjoyed the content. It makes sure that you guys see it when I post it in the future, and it also helps me out as well. So good luck, and I'll see you guys next week.